Okay, this is Alex Colmer, and this is my 4.1 ethical and legal considerations in sports and exercise science. First thing I'll be talking about is the definitions of the terms ethical and legal. So ethical is the moral principles that govern a person's behaviour or conduct of an activity. So what's right and what's wrong, and so that no physical or emotional harm comes to the person. And legal is working within the boundaries of civil law. So, during the Second World War, Nazis would enslave people in their concentration camps or prison camps and force them to take part in their research. So, for the German army, so for example, some of the prisoners would be placed in water that was freezing cold, so that the Nazis would know, like, if a Luftwaffe pilot had to crash land or something in water, like how much clothing they need to wear before, like, they'll go unconscious because of the freezing cold. And so, because of all these outrageous, like, research that happened during World War II, so that the Nazis did, the world came up with a set of rules, which in 1947, which became the Nuremberg Code, which set a bunch of rules that anyone who did research had to abide by. And then in 1964, the World Medical Association created the Declaration of Helsinki, which added on to what had already been established in the Nuremberg laws, and made them a lot better. And then in 1963, Stanley Milgram did an experiment, did some research to find out how far someone would go when being told to give an electric shock to a stranger. So the participant would be in a room, and there'd be someone on the other side answering questions. And if they got the question wrong, then one participant would give an electric shock to the person who gave it wrong. And anytime they got it wrong, they would increase the voltage until it would basically kill the person. But the tape was like pre-recorded, so it wasn't actually hurting anyone. And they just wanted to see how far people would go before they said, "Stop, I can't do this, I don't want to hurt this person." But it found that more people carried on till the very end, when being told, pressured into flicking the lever so that they would increase the voltage. Also in 1971, Zimbardo made the Stanford prison experiment, which was a study to see how fast people would take to the roles of guards and prisoners in a fake prison. So what he did, he got a bunch of uni students or college students in America and made half of them prisoners and half of them guards in a fake prison. And then he told the guards, you can do whatever you want, to these prisoners. And it got, seriously out of hand. The guards took their role way too seriously, and they made themselves, they just beat the prisoners. They forced them to beat others up if they did anything wrong. They would make them strip and stuff, so if anything was wrong, embarrass them completely. And 3 people had to leave within the first few days of this because they just couldn't handle it. So those are the historical studies for why we need all these laws and stuff to do with sports and exercise science research. So in sports and exercise science, we have BASES, which is the British Association of Sports and Exercise Science. And BASES is so the code of conduct for BASES is that they aim to BASES members have to aim to promote research in sports and exercise science, encouragement of evidence-based practice in sports and exercise science, the distribution of knowledge in sports and exercise science, and to develop and maintain a high professional standards for those involved in sports and exercise science, and the representation of the interests of sports and exercise science nationally and internationally. So those are some of the things the members of BASES have to abide by when thinking about their research. And also, all clients that take part in research have the right to expect the highest standards of professionalism, consideration and respect. They have the pursuit of scientific knowledge requires that research and testing is carried out with the utmost integrity, and that the law requires that working practices are safe and that the welfare of the client is paramount. So this is the code of conduct for BASES members when taking part in research in sports and exercise science. So the ethical and legal considerations in research are the Institution Ethics and Review Committee. So these are people that you'll go to when you start, when you first think of your research, and they'll tell you whether you can, yeah, that's fine, you can go through with your research, or yeah, you can do it, but this bit needs a bit of a tweak, otherwise, you won't be able to do it, or no chance of you doing it whatsoever. Rethink it. So ethical clearance is just getting clearance by the ethics committee to start your research. So risk-benefit analysis is making sure when you do your research that the benefit is always greater than the risk. So no one will ever get harmed, no one will ever get harmed, and there won't be a point to them being harmed. Volunteers, so they're the people who will take part in your research. They'll never be paid, so they won't do it for the money, and they'll do it just to help you out in your research. So informed consent, this is when you told the participant what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it, and they sign saying, yeah, I consent to this, I agree to all this. And if you're doing it with younger performers, they'll need to get parental permission as well. And then right to withdraw, this is making sure that when you are going through with your research, the participants always have, if they're ever in pain or they don't want to do it anymore, they always can say, no, stop, I don't want to do this anymore, and that'll be absolutely fine. The health medical screening questionnaire, this is having a patient fill out a form so that you know what past injuries they might have, any allergies if you're doing food or drink research, and all of that, so that you know what the limits that you can go to during your research are. And the participant disclaimer is a contract saying everything, why I'm going to do it, how I'm going to do it, and what's going to happen. And this is so that the participant knows what's going to happen and say, yeah, I agree to this. You're not liable if I injure myself or if anything happens there. Equality and impartiality. This is basically when you're doing your research, not being biased to a certain person. So one person might be better than the other, and you might just get the better person to do all the research, to do all the activities, and the person who's not as good just sit there and watch, and that'll be really impartial. So get everyone doing equal amounts of work. Research responsibility. So this is your responsibility as a researcher to get all the work done to the best of your abilities, have all the professionalism and all this. Deception is, so there's deception of omission, which is when you tell someone something but then you take it away. So you tell someone we're going to run 5 minutes on your treadmill, you write that in your disclaimer or your consent form, and they'll be yep, okay, that's fine. But then when you gets to it, you tell them, that they have to do it maximally, and they weren't like expecting that, so that's deception. That's deception of commission. Deception of omission is when you don't include something that you actually end up doing. So you might not tell them that they're going to ride for 10 minutes on the bike, at like 50% of their like energy. You don't tell them that, and then when it comes to it, they're like, "Oh, you didn't say this. Like, why are we doing this? I don't want to do it." And then all this, and then that could get you into lots of trouble. So health and safety is just making sure that whenever you do your research, everything, like, there's nothing on the floor, or there's no equipment out that should be there, so that the participant doesn't get hurt, and make sure that you do a risk assessment form so that everything is good and no one will get injured. Confidentiality and anonymity is making sure that when you've done your research and you're writing up, you make sure that the participant's name is not said, so you might use a different name or numbers or something like that, so that no one knows like who took part in the research unless they want you to put their name. Data protection is just making sure that all your data is protected and no one can access it or like change it or anything. So scientific misconduct is making sure that you know all the knowledge and you have your expertise, and so if you don't do this, then your reputation might go down in the sports and exercise science community. So the consequences of doing any of those considerations wrong. So you might be told to do ethical training, so this could be you've done something wrong, so the ethics committee will be like, okay, you need to go do ethical training, so in the future you know what you need to do, how to do it, and what you did wrong. You could break the law, so you could get prison sentences or suspended. You could be like cause physical harm if you push someone too far and they might break a bone, or if you do something they're not capable of and hurt themselves. It's also emotional harm if you pick on someone, bully them into doing stuff, and that will definitely cause emotional harm. You can also get fines if you do stuff wrong. Your professional or research credibility will be taken away, and you won't be able to do any research in the future, and your BASES accreditation will also be taken away. So my first scenario is the effectiveness of punishment in youth training activities. So the considerations of this are the person taking part, the researcher, will need to have a CRB and DBS form so that they're able to work with younger children, and they also need to get a consent form from the parent and the participant so that they agree to what you're doing. You also need to tell them the right to withdraw and a health screening questionnaire so that you know that their injuries, past injuries and all that, so that you can do your activities to the limit of what they can do. And so, for example, if you didn't have your DBS check but you carried on with this anyway, the researcher might go to prison, might be fined and suspended. But if you didn't give them the right to withdraw and you forced them to carry on, then that could definitely cause them physical, even emotional harm to the participant if they didn't want to do it and you made them carry them on, and they might break a bone or something. My second scenario is the effectiveness of Lucozade on young football performers to see overall improvement. So the considerations is informed consent from the parent and youth again. You'll need to give them the right to withdraw, and health screening questionnaire, so you know allergies and stuff, so that when they go